with another Let's Make Lunch. And today we are making something that I think we all have quite often in our lives. The humble ramen noodle. These are instant ramen noodles. I think most of us are familiar with them. They're super cheap. They keep in your cupboard forever. And they're really fast to make. So they're something that people love to eat. When I was in college, I ate a lot of ramen noodles. I think you'll find that is pretty typical. But ramen is kind of boring. It's just noodles, right? With a little bit of flavor. And so when I was in college, I started kind of souping up my ramen noodles with frozen vegetables, maybe some meat occasionally, just kind of making it a little bit more hearty and more of a meal instead of more of a snack. So today we're going to have 3 different types of ramen hacks, is what I'm calling them. 2 of them are Asian inspired. We're going to do a Chinese stir fry type of dish. We're also going to do a Thai noodle dish. So it's kind of a peanutty sauce. It's really, really, really tasty. And then the third dish is going to be an Italian style dish, which is completely different than the first 2. So we're going to start with our stir fry. On the stove, I've got a pot of water coming up to boil for our noodles. So those are going to be the first thing we really cook. The rest of our ingredients, we've got some frozen stir fry vegetables. You can get those at the grocery store. It makes this so much easier. This is probably the easiest recipe I have. Maybe the Italian one is pretty easy too, but you don't actually have to chop much for vegetables. In fact, if you don't want to chop anything, you probably can get away with not chopping anything in this recipe. So I've got frozen stir fry vegetables. I've just got about 1.5 cups, 2 cups of those. In this container, I've got some garlic and some ginger, and I used fresh for both of those. If you can't find fresh, or if you don't have fresh and you just want something to eat, you can certainly use granulated garlic, and you could certainly use powdered ginger. Not a problem. I found I had a bunch of ginger. Ginger root can be a little bit difficult sometimes. It smells out of this world. It's really good if you have an upset stomach. Ginger is very good for an upset stomach as well. So to peel ginger, I found this wonderful tip. You just use a spoon, and you basically just rub the side of the spoon against the ginger, and the peel comes right off. It is so fabulous. It makes my life so much easier, because I was always trying to peel it with a knife, and that was so hard. So, peeling ginger, who knew? Super easy. So we have garlic and ginger in here. We've got some soy sauce. We've got a 1/4 cup of soy sauce, a couple of tablespoons of sesame oil. Sesame oil is very fragrant as well. It's got a very robust aroma. You can smell sesame oil. You can taste sesame oil. It's kind of almost overpowering. And then to thicken our sauce, I've got a tablespoon of cornstarch, and that's going to be the thickener for our sauce. I also have some green onion. I've cut up about 2 or 3 green onion into pieces. That's going to be added kind of towards the end, because you don't want to cook them all the way through. And then I've got about 1.5 breasts of chicken, and I've sliced that really thin. For Asian style stir fries, you want to cook your food pretty quickly. In order for it to cook quickly, you should cut it very thinly, and then it will cook much faster. So the first thing we're going to do today is we are going to make our sauce. We're going to make it, and then we're just going to set that aside while we're waiting for our water to boil anyway. So I've got a jar. If you don't have a jar, don't worry about it. Put it in a bowl, mix it up. Not a problem. I'm going to put it in a jar and then shake it up. So we're just going to add our sauce ingredients. Super simple sauce. We've got some soy sauce. We've got our sesame oil. And we have got our corn cornstarch. And that is it. So we're going to put the lid on. And we're just going to shake that up. And our sauce is ready. If you don't add ginger and garlic to the stir fry, it won't have very much flavor. This gives it a little bit of like saltiness. Some the sesame oil gives it a lot of like what they call umami flavor. It's kind of the savoriness flavor, but the garlic and ginger really give it the fragrant and lovely flavor that you want in a stir fry. So let's check our water over here. Looks like that is ready to go. So what I'm going to do is open my ramen noodles. I'm going to use 2 packages of, I've got chicken flavored ramen, but it really doesn't matter what flavor you have because we're not using the packets. The packets can go right in the garbage. Alright, so we're going to put this in. The pan's not big enough. And we're going to turn a timer on. We're going to go for about 2 minutes and see where we're at. So we're just going to let those cook for a few minutes. I set my timer for 2 minutes. I may leave them just a little bit longer than that. Just kind of depends on what they look like after 2 minutes. So we're just going to keep our eye on those. So I just want to make sure that they kind of break up a little bit in the pan. You don't want to break them up too much because you don't want tiny, tiny little pieces necessarily. Keep them a little bit together. But they don't take long to cook, and that is part of their charm. They are super easy to cook up. Alright, so that was my 2 minute mark. I don't have a half a minute one on here, so I'm just going to just talk for a few more seconds. Make sure those are cooked through. They are going to reheat with the chicken and the vegetables, so they will cook a little bit more once we get them back into the pan. So I think those are probably just fine. We're going to turn the heat off, and I'm just going to drain those really quickly. Just like so. And it's okay if you don't get all the water out of there. Kind of help them to not stick together a little bit. So we're just going to set those aside while we finish the rest of our recipe. So I've got some olive oil, a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in my pan. I'm going to heat that onto kind of a medium heat. And I'm going to get my chicken ready to go here because that's going to go in next. Alright, so I'm going to add our chicken into our pan. And we want to cook this pretty quickly. So I may actually even turn the heat up a little bit, maybe like a medium-high heat. So you want to cook it somewhat quickly. And you want to make sure that you have enough room in your pan so it doesn't crowd too much. If it crowds, it's going to steam more than it will actually cook, and you want a little bit of color on it. So yeah, you want to make sure that it's spread out enough in your pan. Also, if you can see, my pieces of chicken are very thinly sliced, so that will help with the cook time as well. But you don't have to use chicken in this. If you want it just to be vegetarian, absolutely up to you. If you want to use pork, that's fine. If you want to use beef, that's fine. Hamburger, really, anything you want to use. If you like tofu, you could put some tofu in there. No problem. Alright, so our chicken looks pretty good. You don't see much pink on it. It's pretty well cooked. We are going to be cooking it a little bit longer, so it's okay if there's slight pinkness on some of these. Not a problem. What we're going to do next is we're going to add our vegetables. So we've got our frozen stir-fry vegetables. And at the same time, I'm going to add the ginger and the garlic. And once you add the ginger and garlic, look out. It is going to start smelling phenomenal in here. All right, so we've got vegetables and chicken. And we really just want to heat those vegetables through. Make sure they're not frozen anymore. You don't have to use chicken in this. If you want it just to be vegetarian, absolutely up to you. If you want to use pork, that's fine. If you want to use beef, that's fine. Hamburger, really, anything you want to use. If you like tofu, you could put some tofu in there. All right, so our chicken looks pretty good. You don't see much pink on it. It's pretty well cooked. We are going to be cooking it a little bit longer, so it's okay if there's slight pinkness on some of these. Not a problem. What we're going to do next is we're going to add our vegetables. So we've got our frozen stir-fry vegetables. And at the same time, I'm going to add the ginger and the garlic. And once you add the ginger and garlic, look out. It is going to start smelling phenomenal in here. All right, so we've got vegetables and chicken. And we really just want to heat those vegetables through. Make sure they're not frozen anymore. Heat them up, thaw them out. Our veggies have had time to warm up in our pan, so we're going to add our noodles. They're very stretchy. Alrighty, I'm going to add those right back into our pan here. Get those heated back up. Okay. I turn the heat down on that just a little. Alright, so we're going to add our sauce. Give it another quick shake. Ooh, wow. Alright, we're going to add the sauce. I don't know that I'm going to add all of it. It's quite a bit of sauce for that amount of noodles. So we can always add more if we feel like I need it. So there we go. We're just going to stir all that in together. You can see the sauce in there. It's all brown and it smells so yummy. And you can see that it's definitely thickening up because of the cornstarch in there. Cornstarch is one type of thickener. You can also use flour. If you use flour, generally to thicken something, you need to use make a roux first. So a roux is flour mixed with some type of oil, cooked in a pan. It thickens things up. It's really good. It's used a lot in French cooking. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to add in, I don't like raw onion very much, so I'm just going to add in a little bit of our onion right now, or all of our onion now. I'm just going to cook it a little bit so it's not completely raw. And there we have it. That is our first recipe, a stir-fry ramen noodle. Normally we would have maybe stir-fry with rice, but the noodles kind of take the place of the rice in this dish. So there we are. First dish complete. I hope you try it and enjoy it. Next up in our ramen noodle hack is a Thai noodle. We're using a peanut sauce for our noodles tonight. So again, I've got two packages of instant ramen. That's what we're going to use for this. I've got fresh veggies instead of frozen ones today. So I have got some Napa cabbage. I've got some thinly sliced red pepper. I've got some very thinly sliced carrot. I've got some more green onion. I've got some lime, which we will just kind of sprinkle on at the end. I do have a can of bean sprouts. I really like bean sprouts, especially in my Thai food. Probably won't use all of those, but they come in a can. So, and then I've got cilantro, which will also be kind of used to finish it. For our sauce, I've got a half cup of peanut butter. This is creamy peanut butter. You can use chunky if you want. It's up to you. You can use, so this is a chili sauce. This is a spicy chili sauce. You can also use a sweet chili sauce if you don't like spice as much. I love spice, so I go with a spicy chili sauce. I've also got some apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of that, and a tablespoon of honey. And those components are going to make up our sauce, our peanut sauce. We may need to add a little water to thin it out a little bit. We'll kind of see as we go. And then I'm going to make this with chicken tonight. So you could just make it vegetarian with the vegetables. You could add tofu. You could add pork. You kind of do what you want with it. But that's kind of our basis for tonight. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get our noodles going. And I learned from experience I'm going to need to break these in half to get them in the pan. Maybe. There's got to be an easier way. Okay, well, broke them into thirds. So these are going to cook for about 2 minutes. Our noodles are finished cooking and I have drained those. I've got another skillet here on the stove with oil. A couple of tablespoons of olive oil is what I've got in there. And I have had that heating for a while, so it is good and hot. And here it says, I am going to add our chicken into our hot pan. To get that going, we want to cook it so it's no longer pink. I don't know if you can hear me over the sizzling. It's quite loud. All right, so we'll be back once our chicken is ready to go. While our chicken is cooking, we are going to make the sauce. It'll come together nice and quickly now that we've got all of our things measured out here. So we're just going to add our chili sauce, either sweet or spicy, whichever you prefer, to our peanut butter. And then we're also going to add the honey. Very sticky. And our last thing is our apple cider vinegar. You could probably use a rice vinegar if you'd like there as well. All right, so let's get all of the peanut butter going here. We're just very carefully, it's a small bowl, so carefully kind of stir it together. Get all that peanut butter mixed in. The peanut butter has a little bit of sweetness to it as well, so that's going to help kind of balance out the flavors. Thai food is very much about sweet and salty and sour, kind of all combined into one lovely taste. And we are going to have to thin that out. So I've dumped my sauce into a bigger bowl so you can see it a little bit better. And this is quite thick. This would be really tasty if you wanted to use it as a dip or something like that, but we're using it as a sauce. So it is too thick for a sauce. I've just got some warm water. I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. Stir it in until I've got the consistency that I am looking for. Looks like we're going to need a lot of water for our sauce. So we're just going to throw that in there. Mix it up. The water and the oil and the peanut butter don't want to mix very well, so it's giving me a little trouble. But they will eventually become friends and hang out in my bowl. All right, so that looks like a much better consistency for a sauce. May even want it a little bit thinner. It kind of depends on your preference. It's pourable at this point, so we're going to leave it there for now. All right, our chicken is basically cooked through at this point. I am going to just turn this down a little bit to more of a low, medium low. We're going to add our carrots first and let them start cooking a little bit. Carrots are a harder vegetable, more firm, so they do take a little bit more time, but these are cut fairly thin, so they shouldn't take too long. And then we will let those cook for just a few minutes, and then we're going to add the rest of our veggies. Carrots have been cooking for a few moments, so we're going to add the rest of our veggies. There are the red peppers, and they're very sliced very thinly. I'm going to add the onion towards the end. This is Napa cabbage that I've chopped. You can also use bok choy, it's fairly similar. And then I'm just going to use a handful or so of the sprouts. It's quite a few sprouts. I like them, but within reason. Alright, so we're just going to kind of mix that together, make sure they're all incorporated and cooking through. So this is going to cook for a few minutes until things are kind of cooked through. They're fresh vegetables, so they do take a little bit longer. The veggies are cooking. You don't want to cook them until they're super soft. You want them to have a little bit of crunch to them. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm going to add our sauce. I'm going to stop there for now. We'll see if we need to add more once we add the noodles. So let's grab those. Just going to put those back into our pan. These noodles get pretty sticky. As you can see, they don't want to come out. Come out and play, noodles. Alright, here we go. Alright, so we're just going to combine all of those ingredients in our pan as carefully as we can without spilling everything out. The pan is pretty full at this point, and it looks like we're going to need some more sauce probably. What I also did is I saved the water from our noodles, which is also a good thing to add a little bit of that in, just to kind of loosen it up a little bit. Not a lot, you just want a little bit. It's nice hot water, and it's got some of the starch from the noodles in it, which is good. Kind of like pasta water, you don't ever want to throw out your pasta water until you're finished with making your pasta, because you just never know when you might want a little bit of water just to help the sauce kind of move through your pasta and coat it nicely. Alright, we're going to add a little bit more sauce. I'm not quite happy with that, so I think we're just going to add the rest of it. Why not? Right? Let's go crazy. I love peanut sauce. This would be a good sauce for chicken satay. So chicken satay is chicken skewer that you marinate and then you cook it on the grill, and then you can dip it in a peanut sauce, and it's just so heavenly. So I think we are pretty good to go at this point. So at this point, this is when you would plate it up, and then you could also add your cilantro. So if you caught my my previous show about cilantro, it had cilantro in it, with the cilantro, let's see, cilantro lime crema. You either like cilantro or you don't, and I really like it, so we put a lot in. And then you can also, once you get it on your plate, just put a little squeeze of lime on there. It will brighten up the flavors and kind of give it a lightness. So that is our second dish of ramen noodle. Enjoy! We are ready to get started with our final ramen noodle hack. This one is completely different than the first two. So the first two were more of an Asian-inspired dishes, which is kind of where ramen comes from, so you expect that. This one, totally different. This is actually a recipe you would normally use spaghetti in. It is an Italian dish. It is called cacio e pepe, and it basically means cheese and pepper. Cheese with pepper. So that's basically our ingredients today. Very basic. We've got 1.25 cups of water. We've got 1 package of ramen noodles that I've broken in half just to make it fit better into the pan. I have got about 1 cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and I fine grate that, it will melt faster. And I've got about 3 tablespoons of butter and my pepper grinder, black pepper. So that is all the ingredients we need. This is going to be super tasty. So this is a one pot dish. It's a little bit different than the one we did yesterday where we cooked the noodles and then drained them and then remixed them in with everything else. This one, everything cooks together. All kind of, it just comes together in the pot. So it's nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by switching our heat on here. And we want kind of a medium-high heat. We're going to add our water, 1 1/4 cup of water into our pan. And we're going to also add our noodles in at the same time. So what we're going to do is we are going to bring this up to a boil. We're going to boil the noodles for about a minute. We'll flip them. The water isn't covering the noodles, which is fine. We are going to actually flip those noodles over in the pan. Once they start boiling, we'll flip them over and loosen them up and get them, you know, noodly. I think that's the word, right? As you can see, our noodles have been boiling. We've boiled some of the water down, reduced the water, is what they say in the lingo. So at this point, we're going to keep it on the heat for a minute. We're going to add our butter and some freshly ground black pepper. You add as much or as little pepper as you like. I like a lot of peppers, so I'm going to add a bunch. All right. And then we're just going to stir that in. Make sure the butter is all melted and gooey into our noodles. You want to make sure you have at least a 1/4 cup of water at the bottom of the pan before you add these things, just so it keeps your noodles from sticking together as much. They're still going to a little bit, but especially after you add the cheese. All right, so you can see the butter is melted. The pepper is all inside there. Looks delicious. Smells even better. We're going to take it off the heat at this point. You always want to make sure you take it off the heat before you add your cheese. And I'm just going to add about half of that to begin with. And get that melting into my noodles. But Carrie, you should add the rest of the cheese. Why, yes, you're right. I should add the rest of the cheese. And I will. There it is. All right. So we're just going to make sure that melts nicely. The finer you grate the cheese, the better it will melt into your noodles. So you can kind of see it's kind of a more of a sauce. It's not real clumpy or anything. It's just a nice sauce that's coating our noodles. So if you're fancying some Italian, and maybe you don't even have any spaghetti at home. Maybe you're out of spaghetti, but you have a package of ramen noodles. You can just use those. Excellent. All right, so we are going to plate this up in a bit. Have a great Italian ramen dish. And I hope you try it at home. And it would be great if you leave me a comment and tell me if you've tried it and if you liked it. Or if you didn't, that's great too. So we will be back again in a couple of weeks with another Let's Make Lunch. Until then, have fun and keep cooking.